Everyone loves to receive an invitation. The reality is, if you're a follower of Jesus, God has sent you an invitation. And that invitation is to join Him in what He's doing in the world. In this video, we're going to talk about responding to God's big invitation coming up.
I had really big dreams. I dreamed I was going to be a garbage collector. When I was little, I thought it was the coolest thing. You know, you remember years ago, this doesn't happen now, but there were multiple guys. There's a guy driving the truck, and there were two guys hanging on the back, or at least one anyway, and they were hanging on. I thought, man, that would be so cool to be this guy that's hanging on, jumps off, throws this in the dumps the trash can in the thing. I didn't think about stinking and all that, so it was just so cool for me. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and we didn't have that in the woods where I grew up, but my grandparents lived in a big city, Headland, Alabama, had like 2,500 people, and they had a garbage truck. And I thought it was so cool to have these garbage collectors. I'd never seen anything like that except when I go to visit my grandparents. And then I love baseball. I played baseball for 10 years growing up, and I kind of wanted to be a Major League Baseball pitcher. At that time, Tom Seaver was, that's way a long time ago. He was a right-hander, I was a right-hander, and I wanted to be like Tom Seaver. Then I realized that I had more brains than I had body, okay? I decided I wanted to be a scientist. And I wanted to discover something and make an invention that would change the world. As kids, we have big dreams, don't we? We have huge dreams. But it's kind of sad that as we grow up and we run into reality, that sometimes we stop dreaming or we shrink our dreams. Some people don't, but most people do. They let their dreams shrink. And we don't dream big. We don't think big. We think reality. Okay, this is reality. I'm trying to be reasonable. I listened to a good talk this last week about unreasonable leadership. That we need more unreasonable leadership that is pursuing unreasonable God-sized dreams. God is still at work doing big things. We don't always see His work, but He is on a mission to do big things. And God invites you and me to join Him in His big dreams. Here's the big idea I want to unpack for you today in our stories in the Old Testament. Say it with me. God is inviting you to be a part of something big that He is doing. God is inviting you to be a part of something big that He is doing. Let's pray. Lord, you are at work in a redemptive mission on this planet. It is a worldwide mission. It is a life-changing, city-changing, state-changing, nation-changing, world-changing vision. A mission, Lord, to redeem mankind. You invite us to be a part of that. And you invite us to have specific roles in that. So I pray today as we look at the story of Abraham, that you would help us to see our part in this big vision, this big mission that you're pursuing. In Jesus' name, amen. So we'll look at we'll begin a 3-part look at the life of Abraham as we're marching through the Old Testament this year. And I want to give you just a little bit of biblical background from Genesis chapter 11 before we jump into the beginning of Abram's story. Abram became Abraham. He's Abram at this point. Abram's story in Genesis chapter 12. This is approximately 300 years after the flood. Noah is still alive when Abram is born. Do you ever think about that? But if you count up the years, Noah lived 50 years after Abram was born. So I wonder if Terah, Abram's dad, and Abram and his brothers knew Noah. How cool would that be, right? To know Noah, the one man who literally saved the world by building the ark with his family. They lived in a community called Ur. And Ur we'll show you where it is in just a minute, kind of give you some perspective of where that is. And then God led Terah and Abram and their and his brothers and the rest of the family to move from Ur to Haran. And that's where our story picks up with Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." Now they're in Haran at this point, not Ur. He said, "Get up and leave. I'm going to show you where you should go. And I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." It always helps me to gain some perspective by looking at a map. So let me show you where we are on the map here. So to give you some perspective, this is modern-day Iraq here. You can see, I mean, it's hard for you to see in the back. Those are the Tigris and Euphrates rivers right here. I think Baghdad is somewhere along in here. And Babylon later, the Babylonian capital was somewhere in here. This is Ur down here in near the coast, near the Persian Gulf in Iraq. So they moved all the way from Ur 600 miles up to Haran, and Haran is in southern Turkey today, southeastern Turkey. And then they moved from Haran. This would be down through Syria today, down through Lebanon, all the way down to Israel. This is the Dead Sea right there to give you a perspective, and this would be where Jerusalem is right here. So this is Shechem. This is where they ended up in our story today. So something that's important for you to note here, whose idea was it, whose dream was it for Abram to leave Haran to go to Canaan? God's. Look, this is God's plan. This is God's vision, God's mission that he's invited Abram to be a part of. This was too big for Abram to dream up. No, who dreams, I'm going to become a nation? An egomaniac, maybe, but not some sane individual. This was too big for Abram to bring up. He couldn't come up with this dream. But this was God's plan from the beginning of time, to raise up a godly remnant who would keep faith in God through the generations, and through that godly thread, he would bring us the Messiah. He first announced this in Genesis right after Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. In his word to the serpent in 3:15, he hints at a coming Redeemer. He preserved this godly remnant from Adam down to Seth. Remember Cain and Abel? That didn't work out. So their third son, Adam and Eve's third son, Seth, became part of a godly line. And then Seth's son, after Enosh, they began to call on the Lord in that time. It says that in Genesis chapter 4. And then Enoch was a godly man who walked with God. So it's kind of tracing down through the generations. And then you came to Noah, who was a blameless and godly man and walked with God. And then his son Shem became part of that lineage. So God is at work this whole time doing the same thing he's calling Abraham to do now. He was building a nation out of Adam. He was building a nation out of Seth and so forth. He just didn't say it in those words. But his invitation to Abram was to get up and go, and I'm going to show you where to go. I'm going to make a nation out of you. I believe that God is still at work doing the same thing in you and me that he did with Abram. That is, inviting us to be a part of his big mission, his big plans. So I want to give you some insights from this story. I think that it can be very personal for you, insights into God's big invitation, his call, his invitation. See, I think the story of Abram is not just a cool story of the beginning of the nation of Israel. It's not just a cool story that happened in ancient times 2,500 years ago. It's a window into the ways of God. It's an opportunity for us to see how God works. God put this story in there for a reason. He told us about this call. This seems like a small thing. He's just leading this nomadic guy to move from one place to the next, and he's going to have kids that are going to grow into a nation. So God lets us zoom in and see the conversation, see what's happening, because he does the same thing over and over and over again. This is the way God works. I am very indebted to the work of Henry Blackaby and in his workbook and his book, Experiencing God, for helping me to understand this. And it's had a huge impact on my life, and I hope it can do the same for you. So I want to look at some insights into God's big imitation, how God works, how God worked in Abram, and how he can work and wants to work in all of us. Number one, God is always at work around us. God is always at work around you. God's not done with big plans because his big plan is still in effect, is it not? His big plan is still in effect. Remember, we talked about that you can explain the Bible in 4 words, right? 4 movements: creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. The creation's already happened. God's done creating. We're living in the fall. We're living in the time when sin has created brokenness in our lives and all around the world, and countries invade other countries. We're messed up, right? Disease, heartache, betrayal, all those things happen in part of our world. We live in that world. We live in that brokenness. And God has gotten in the middle of that brokenness, just as he did in Noah's time and just as he did in Abram's time. He got in the middle of that brokenness with a plan of redemption. So he is still working on redemption, moving toward restoration. So he's still on that mission of redemption and restoration. So if God is at work around us with this mission of redemption and restoration, how can you tell what he's doing? How can you tell what he's doing in Tallahassee? How can you tell what he's doing in your house or your neighborhood or your workplace or another part of the world? How can we tell what he's doing? A couple things. Number one, look for the effects of the fall in people around you. Look for the effects of brokenness. When God calls your attention to brokenness, oftentimes that's an invitation for you to get involved. You know, we walk by people all the time that have needs. But occasionally, doesn't God stop you and help you see something, someone that's hurting or a cause like the Women's Pregnancy Center? God says, I'm doing something here. And it somehow it impresses upon you, this is something you need to get involved with. We see this in the life of Jesus. He was modeling this for us. Matthew 9:36. When he, that is Jesus, saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. He obviously must have told the disciples this because they're just kind of listening to what Jesus said and watching what Jesus does. So they understood that when he saw the people, something was different about Jesus. He was locked into the need of these people. He saw the evidence of the fall. When we see people through the eyes of Jesus and engage them the way Jesus engaged them and neighbor them the way Jesus did, it inspires us to want to join him in his work. We see those people the way Jesus did. I mean, we just want to get involved. So number one, look for evidence of the fall in people around you. And number two, look for evidence of redemption and restoration in process. Look for evidence of redemption and restoration in process. This happened to me recently, and I just want to share it with you. So in January, so you're moving into the new year, I heard about Samaritan's Purse getting involved with trying to resettle Afghan refugees in our country. And you know that we've been moving forward with a project there. I knew about the refugees, and I watched the same newsreels that you watched and was just burdened and frustrated, angry, honestly, at how things had transpired in Afghanistan and had compassion for these people. So I saw the brokenness, I saw the need, but it was just overwhelming. You know, I didn't know how I could wrap my heart around that, so I didn't feel called necessarily at that time to get involved, but I saw the brokenness. But then I got an email from Samaritan's Purse that they were getting involved in resettling refugees, and they felt like God was leading them to partner with churches to do that, to help them settle in communities where the body of Christ was already settled. And when I saw that video and that from Franklin Graham and got that email, it was not like, oh, that's cool. It was as if God was calling me, get up and go to a place where I will show you. And I knew I can't do this by myself. And that wasn't what God was saying. He's saying, Canopy Roads needs to partner with this project. And that's what we've done. We now have a team. We have leadership. We made an application this week to become a partner church through Samaritan's Purse. There have been background checks being run on our leaders. And ultimately, we have to submit a plan to them for how we're going to do that. It's a huge project, huge project. It's not like what some other things are being done here with another organization, the IRC. This is a totally different approach. But we just feel like God's leading us to this. God will do the same for you. You will see that He will draw your attention to the brokenness around you. And that's why we talk about living sent. We need to see people the way Jesus does. And when we do, we'll be aware of what's going on in their lives. And God will call us to engage in that and to neighbor them. And when you see God already at work, it may be an invitation for you to join in restoring that brokenness, which is what I feel like we've done or are doing with the Afghan Resettlement Project. Number two, so not only is God always at work around you, God invites you to join Him in His work. God invites you to join Him in His work. God is already working His redemptive plan, okay? So He invited Abram to join in this plan. This is not a new plan. He's been doing this for a few thousand years. He started with Adam and Eve. And as soon as the first sin separated them from God, God introduced His plan. Now, He already had the plan from eternity. He didn't make up the plan, what am I going to do now? They ate the fruit. I know what I'll do. I'll send Jesus. That was not, a new thought. This was part of God's plan. He knew this would unfold the way it did. Adding up the timeline from what we see, the ages of people and so forth in Genesis, this is, according to those numbers, 2,024 years after God created Adam. So God's already been at work in this for over 2,000 years. He was working the whole time on this same plan. Now, He's inviting Abraham to join in what he was already doing. Reading it again. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." God was the initiator, right? Remember, Abram didn't dream this up. God had the plan, so He needed to invite somebody to join His plan. So He invited Abram. He initiated it. The mission was to bless all the families of the earth, ultimately through Jesus, through eternal life. The method was to make of Abram a great nation, human ancestors of Jesus. And the means was the presence and power of God. Abram couldn't do this. So Abram didn't dream of the plan. He didn't have the mission. He didn't come up with a method. He couldn't supply the power. He and Sarai were childless, and they were elderly. He was 75, she was 65 when this started. Notice how many times in these 3 verses God says, "I will. I will show you. Go to a land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who dishonor you." God is going to supply the power. God is inviting you to be a part of something big that He is doing. It's a God-sized mission. How can you tell what God is inviting you to do and when God is inviting you? Number one, God has already invited all Christ's followers to be involved. He's given a general invitation to all followers of Jesus. There's a general invitation. We know God is still at work in this great redemption plan. So we know generally what the plan is. A couple ways that he says this in the Gospels. This is two of the 5 times he issues what we would call the Great Commission. We look at the Matthew passage and say that's the Great Commission, but it's actually in all 4 of the Gospels plus Acts. So here's 2 of them. John 20:21. Read this with me. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you." Go live sent. That's where we get our missional mandate for our vision is living sent. I'm sending you. And then Matthew 28:19-20. Read it with me. "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all I have commanded you, and behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age." The mission is to go make disciples. The method, followers of Jesus, the method is go tell people about Jesus, baptize them, that is, bring them into the church. The church is is Jesus' living body on the planet through whom he does his work. And then teach them to obey. That is, teach them to follow Jesus. Because when someone first comes to Christ, they don't know what it means to follow Jesus. So they need to learn from somebody else, just as the disciples didn't know what it meant to live like Jesus, have a Jesus lifestyle. He lived with them for 3 years. So that's the method. And the means is the presence and power of Jesus. What does the last verse say? The last phrase in the last verse. I am with you always. Because he knows this is a commission. It's too big for us, just like it was too big for Abraham. Abraham and Sarah had been trying to have kids for years. I don't know how long they'd been married. He's 75, she's 65, probably a long time. They couldn't have kids. They couldn't do this. They couldn't even do that. They couldn't even start a family, much less a nation. And God has this enormous vision for them. I want to make a nation out of you. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the conversation that Abram had with Sarah? When he comes back, he said, Sarah, guess who I met today? Who'd you meet? God. Right. Yeah, no, I did. Yeah. He talked to me. Okay, so what did he tell you? He said, he's going to turn me into a whole nation of people. How's he going to do that since you don't even have any kids? Abram, are you fooling around on me? No, I'm not. I promise. He said, he's going to bless us. He's going to bless our friends, and he's going to kick the teeth out of our enemies. Really? What have you been smoking, Abram? I mean, you've been hanging out with the camels too much. I mean, what's wrong with you? I mean, this is a huge thing. God gave him a specific instruction. Get up and go where I show you. God will give you a specific invitation. Your part in God's mission. Abram's part was to leave Haran, take your whole family and everybody else. And by the way, something you'll see about this is when you respond to God's invitation, it doesn't just affect you, it affects all the people around you. When God told Terry and me to move to Tallahassee, the kids had to come too. We didn't leave them in Montgomery. It disrupted their lives. We heard that from the older ones. Okay? Yep. Now notice, the vision, the mission, is for Abram to be turned into a whole nation. To make a whole nation of followers of Jesus, followers of God. How many disciples did Abram make his whole life? 1. Isaac. That's all the kids he had of the promise. A little complicated. We'll get more in that next week, but it was one child of the promise. And then Isaac only had 2 kids, and one of them didn't stay with God. You see, one disciple makes a difference. maybe that's what God is calling you. Maybe your whole life is to invest in someone that you will transfer the authority to be a Jesus follower and make other disciples. You see, it's not, we consider Abraham, the father of our faith, the father of the Jewish faith, and consequently our faith. A patriarch. He made one disciple. Just because you have someone who can witness to a lot of people and have a lot of people say yes to Jesus, it doesn't mean they're more important than Abraham, right? Abraham's kind of important. Don't think that your part is a little part. You may think that, what I'm doing doesn't really matter. I'm not standing up and preaching. I'm not leading a big mission team to some other foreign country. I'm not a missionary somewhere else. I just have a little part. Abram just had one kid. Pretty important part, huh? Don't sell yourself short. What you see as a little part, God obviously sees as a big part. I hope you walk away from here with that, understanding that your part you play in the mission is huge. It's huge. And it won't be the same kind of part that everybody sitting around you plays. We'll drill more down in that in just a minute. God will give you specific invitations to join him. Well, how do I know when God is giving me an invitation? How did Abram know? He just did. God spoke to him. Maybe it was an audible voice. Later, he appears to Abram in a vision. So we actually have a whole Bible that he didn't have. God frequently speaks to me through stories like this and other things that he says in the Bible. But God didn't use the Bible to speak to me about the Afghan resettlement project. I just knew it was from God. You will know. That's what I'm saying. God has the ability to speak in such a way that you will know if you're paying attention. So, God is always at work around us, and God invites us to join him in his work. And number 3, God's invitation always moves you out of the comfort zone in your life into a faith zone. He moves you out of your comfort zone into the faith zone. You see, responding to God's invitation involves major adjustments in your life. You can't keep doing the same thing you're doing and join God. That is, you can't have your life so full of everything else and still add the God thing to it. So we have to reorient our lives to make sure that we work around that mission. That doesn't mean that we have to quit our job necessarily or get rid of our friends. God works through that. But we have to reorient our priorities so that in the midst of that, we are pursuing God's call. We're joining him in that work. Abram had to make some major adjustments, right? He had to load up all of his family and all of his stuff, camels, donkeys, sheep, goats, whatever he owned, pack it all up and start to Canaan. 400 miles. Now, he didn't know where he was going. Could have been 2,000 miles. It could have been, across the river. God didn't say. He just said, get up and go. Abram obeyed by faith. Genesis 12, 4-7. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran, and Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. He traveled over 400 miles. It was not like loading up a U-Haul and jumping on the interstate and driving down to Israel. And this was a huge deal. They walked or rode camels the whole way. But what we don't need to miss, and this is something that we're looking at this story, and we're looking at the end of the story, right? We're looking at the story in the past, and the whole story has happened. The whole story hadn't happened when God told Abram to get up and go. He didn't even tell him where he was going, right? He said, get up and go to a place that I will show you. He didn't show him until he got there. So what that means is that every step he took Every night they made camp and every morning they broke camp was a step of faith. Every time Sarai or the servants are said, how much longer is it? Your kids never did that, right? How much longer is it? Abram had to say, yeah, I don't know. At least when your kids say that, you kind of knew what your destination was. You could say, shut up and be quiet, or you could say, oh, it's about another hour, or, it's going to be a couple more days. Abram had no idea. Every step was a step of faith. That's what's so powerful about Abram. He said yes to God's invitation, and it was a step of faith and obedience. Faith and obedience. You see, responding to God's invitation is a journey of faith and obedience. What God is calling you to is going to require you to take a step of faith to say, yes, okay, I'll do it. And once you do it, it's going to require another step and a step and a step. It's a journey of faith. And that's what Abram teaches us. In some respects, what he did was simple. He just said, load up the camels and the tents and the kids, your other kids, not my kids, I don't have any kids, but Sarah and the servants, and we're going to go wherever God tells us. And he went. And he just had one kid. And that was his contribution to the world. More than that, it was his demonstration of faith and obedience. Hebrews 11:8 says this, looking back, the writer of Hebrews wants to make sure we get the story of Abraham right and what was most important. What was key that made Abraham become the father of our nation? What was his part in that? God's part was he had the plan. He invited Abraham to join in that. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. When Abram reached Canaan, by the way, it's another 25 years before he had a kid. He was 100 years old. And Sarai, who became Sarah, was 90 years old when Isaac was born. So in many respects, Abraham didn't see the fulfillment of the vision, right? He didn't see Jesus. But he saw the plan, he saw the vision. So he took his step in the vision. God's vision was bigger than Abram. God's given us a big vision here, a huge vision, to raise up a new generation of Christ followers. That's what we feel like God has called us to, is to raise up a new generation of Christ followers who will transform our city and other cities wherever God raises up through us, a new generation of Christ followers. I won't be around to see all of that. And some of you won't be around to see all of that, but we can see the beginning of the vision. And it won't happen unless you and I take steps of faith when God says, join me in this work. Here's what you do. Here's what you do. Here's what you do. God is inviting you to something big. And it's to raise up a new generation of Christ followers right here. Or if you're watching on the internet, right where you are, where you live. Wherever that is. God is raising up a new generation of Christ followers. That's the big redemption plan that God's been working since before the time of Abraham. Now he's inviting us to be a part of that. That's the general invitation. All Christ followers are invited to be a part of that God-sized vision. But God has a specific part for you to play in that. He's inviting you to be a part of something big that he is doing. Quickly, 4 next steps to discern where God is calling you. Number 1, devote yourself to prayer and Bible reflection. Make that a habit. Because if you want to hear from God, you have to listen. We have to be listening. So ask God to reveal your part in the vision. As we finish with the story of Abram here in verses 7 and 8, then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. This is after he's arrived in the promised land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. 5 different times in the whole story of Abram, he built an altar. It seems like everywhere he went, he was building a place for everyone, himself and everyone else with him, to worship God. He cultivated a habit of spending regular time with God. And that's what we have to do. If we want to hear from God, we have to cultivate a habit of spending regular time talking to God and listening to God through the Word. Number 2, discover and use your gifts. You probably already know what you're good at and what you're not good at. God is more than likely calling you to join his work, his mission, with something that you're good at, something that you're interested in, or a need that you see that you know with what you're good at, you could make a contribution there. We invite you to test drive a ministry here. Check it out. You don't have to commit for the next 5 years, to try it. Try out a ministry. Try out this ministry, that ministry, based on what you think you're good at, what you would like to do. And by the way, we need more young families involved. We have a good many young families. I know you're busy with kids. We were too when we had 4 kids, but we got involved. Get involved. Find something you can do. You won't be able to do as much as you can when your kids are older, but you can do something. And when people come and they see young families involved, it helps them say, okay, there's a place for me here. Look, that's somebody my age is involved in doing something. Number 3, do the vision with others. Do the vision with others. Christianity is a team sport, right? It's not a sport that God only invites a few people to be a part of. It's a team sport. Abram kind of needed Sarah for the part, right? They couldn't raise up a nation without 2. Our vision is not a solo mission. Our vision is a great co-mission with Jesus and with other believers. So connect with other believers every week. Make that a habit, a pattern that you do. We're better and we have more fun when we do life and do mission together. Number 4, dedicate yourself to missionary living. We call it living sent. That's just living on mission. What do we call someone who's on mission? A missionary. So don't just think of missionaries as these sold out crazy people that just move to any part of the world just to obey God. We're all missionaries if we're a follower of Jesus, because there's only one great co-mission. If we join the co-mission to make disciples, whatever our part in that is, we are a missionary. You don't have to be an evangelist to be a missionary. You may have gifts of mercy or gifts of helps or gifts of teaching. Whatever your gifts are, use those gifts. Love God, love people, talk to them about Jesus. God is doing something big around us. And he's inviting you and me to join in that work. It's a general invitation in the sense that we're all going to be part of the redemptive mission to make disciples. And we're calling it to raise up a new generation here at Tallahassee. But there's a specific role for you to play. Ask God to show you, and he will. Let's pray. God, thank you for calling us. Thank you for inviting us to be a part of something big, something world-changing, something God-sized, something that you are doing that we couldn't possibly do without you. And you're not calling us to go dream up something and do something on our own. You're calling us to join you in something you're already doing. So God, I pray for every person who is sitting in this room and every person who is watching on the internet, that they would listen and that you would speak so that they can hear, so they know what their specific part is. And God, help us to be like Abram, people who take one step of faith after the other. Trust and obey, trust and obey. Help me to be that person, Lord. Help every person who is listening to this to be someone who hears your voice, accepts your invitation by faith, and takes a step, and then another step and another step. Lord, help us to be those kind of people. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Well, if you found this content valuable, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do that as well. Here at Canopy Roads Baptist Church, we are on mission. That mission is to develop fully devoted followers of Christ. If you'd like to partner with us in that mission, I want to give you 2 quick and easy ways that you can do that. Number 1, simply go directly to the link on this screen. Or number 2, simply scroll down in the description, click on the link that's there. Thanks again so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next week.